Have you ever seen a law student on the day of their graduation? They look like they've spent the past 3 years being dragged backwards through brambles, and they're smiling because they survived. Now, here you are preparing to take on a similar journey. So, what do you need to know before you embark upon your law education? Are there any tips and tricks that can help you make a more effortless transition? Is law school even right for you? Look, surprises are great for birthdays, but in academia, they almost always come with a side of existential crisis. So, here to answer our questions and more is Kyle McEntee, the Executive Director of Law School Transparency, an award winning nonprofit whose mission it is to make entry to the legal profession more transparent, affordable, and fair to all people. So, with that said, let's expose the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about law school and what you need to know before signing up for a life sentence. Okay, Kyle, one thing I think is important for students to know is how law school is different to the 3 or 4 years of college they've just gone through. So, can you paint that picture for me? How is law school different to regular college?
Yeah. So many approach law school like a 9 to 5 job, but the key is, I think, to do what works for you. That requires you to reflect on your study habits, how you best learn both new information as well as new manners of thinking, and then how that connects to the expectations of your professors in any of the courses that you're in. In a real sense, that's college too. But a lot of people view law school as an opportunity for a fresh start and a fresh start at a lot of new habits. But one important, I think, difference is that law school exams are often your only grade. Now, that's not exclusively the case, and that's changing a bit as law schools start to better understand pedagogical best practices, but that can be quite stressful. And something else that can be quite stressful is the fact that law school is on a forced curve in all 1L classes, so all first-year classes, but then even a lot of classes in the upper levels. And what a forced curve means that there will be a certain set number of, say, A's, B's, and C's. And so if there's 50 people in the class and it's 10 A's and 10 C's and the rest get B's, it doesn't matter how good your exam is. If there are 10 better than you, then at best you're getting a B.
Yeah.
And this has implications, of course, to your grade, but it also has implication to the kind of jobs that you might be able to get, as well as implications for scholarships. So about a third of law schools, it's down in recent years, have something called a conditional scholarship. And a conditional scholarship is one where the recipient only gets to keep it if they have a certain level of performance. And so if your performance is based on your peers, not just your own performance, that can mean that you're paying more for law school in future years just because of this forced curve.
Yeah. I suppose I understand that they're trying to teach you and prepare you for a legal career in which it's like you are as good as your opponent is bad. So you are now competing for that grade.
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting point, and I think actually goes to maybe one of the toxic problems with law school and the legal profession.
Right.
And that's that law is not always so adversarial. Even when you have an opponent on the other side in litigation, if you're going to be a jerk to them, that doesn't mean that's the best thing for your client. Sometimes it means coming to the middle and figuring out how to make nice with the lawyers on the other side, because A, it's just the right thing to do, but B, it's also in your client's best interest. Right. And we kind of start people off from the very beginning in law school thinking about everyone as their adversaries, when really that's just not a healthy way of going about life.
Yeah. I know that's in any kind of college or learning setting, that working with your peers is actually a really powerful way to accelerate your progress and your learning. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's talk about the financial realities of going to law school. Most people think that a career in law is incredibly lucrative, so it's worth taking on that student debt. But what are the financial realities you want prospective law students to be aware of?
Yeah, so there are some really high paying jobs that new law school graduates can get, but the majority of graduates make about a third of what those graduates are making. So at the biggest law firms in the country, the new starting salary is about $200,000. Some firms it's $200,000, some firms it's $205,000. that's a really big paycheck for a new graduate. But it also comes with really big hours. And it's also very difficult for most people to get these jobs. These jobs are very concentrated at a small minority of law schools. About 20 schools in the US have about half of all of those jobs going to those graduates. And also on top of that, jobs at those large law firms are very GPA driven. And so at the very tippy top schools, if you're top half, even bottom third, you're probably going to be all right with getting this job. But at the vast majority of schools, we're talking the top 5%, maybe top 10%, but in some cases, only the top 1 or 2 students, not even percentage points, are able to get those jobs. And so those jobs are just not accessible to most people. The labor market for new law school graduates, it's a very strange labor market, and salaries actually fall into a bimodal distribution, meaning on the one side, you've got these high-paying jobs that are $200,000, and then the other side, you've got the other half making between $40,000 and $70,000. Now, those salaries can still be pretty good, especially relative to other opportunities. But when you consider the amount of debt people take on to go to law school, it does change your calculus just a little bit. And really, I described this distribution as bimodal. It's actually trimodal because 1 in 7 graduates don't have any salary 6 months after graduation. And I say 6 months after graduation because that is when your first loan payment is due. And this debt really matters to not only your quality of life, but your satisfaction, your mental health, family planning, and much more. And those things are really greatly impacted by the debt, again, that starts 6 months after graduation. Now, 2 additional points I want to make on the financial realities related to debt. So the first is that interest is not subsidized during law school. And so your interest is accumulating starting on the day you actually get that first loan. And so the amount you borrow, you have to take into account figuring out how much you're going to owe, that interest and the interest rates, and those 3 years of non-payment. The second is that there is a program in the US called the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Program, or PSLF. And what this does is it allows for those who are in public service, that is, people who are working for nonprofits, most nonprofits. If it's a 501c3 nonprofit, it definitely counts. Other nonprofits, it's hit or miss. Or the government at any level. If you work in those jobs for the time period that covers 120 payments, you will have your debt entirely wiped out. And that's only if you're in the right kind of loan program, meaning if you have a direct loan from the federal government, and you're on the right kind of plan. But that said, that is an option for people to consider to manage their debt. That said, those jobs are also very difficult to get in a lot of cases. They're very competitive, and it might not be exactly what you want to do. If you want to be a divorce lawyer, or if you want to be an immigration lawyer, some of those will be public service jobs, some will not. And having to make that choice about which kind of employer you go to and have major implications for your student loan payments is something you want to forecast as best as you can.
So I'm understanding now why getting into those Ivy League schools is so crucial. Well,
yes. So it is very crucial if you want those high paying jobs. You want that flexibility, right? But that's not for everyone for good reason. First of all, it's literally not for everyone because it's hard to get those jobs. But second of all, the quality of life at those firms really might not be what you want.
I've read John Grisham. Yeah, I know. There's 100-hour, 80-hour work weeks or 100-hour work weeks or something like that.
Exactly. And people burn out in those jobs. They last 2-3 years, and they're like, I'm going to go move on. And so that's good. They have the exit opportunities. But it almost always comes with a much smaller salary. And then what does that mean for your ability to repay the loans? Well, it depends on how much that salary is and what your other obligations are, as well as what the actual loan balance is.
Right. Okay, well, you've sort of touched on this, but what about the realities of the job market? Are those legal jobs relatively easy to come by or not?
Yeah, so I'm going to take this question in two parts. One,
Yeah.
to talk about the labor market generally, and then more specifically about individual law schools.
Yeah.
So, since I graduated law school in 2011, the labor market's changed, right? So,
Yeah.
for the 30 years prior to that, the number of full-time legal jobs available in the US
Mm.
was pretty much flat. It fluctuated year to year, but it
Yeah.
was all over the trend line, it was pretty flat.
Mm.
Um, since that time, so over the last 5 to 8 years, we've actually seen a decline in the number of full-time legal jobs by about 20%. And
Wow.
this reflects structural change in the legal profession and how companies and people are obtaining legal services.
Mm.
Um, so now enrollment has also changed over this period. Enrollment peaked in 2010, 1L enrollment, which means that actual enrollment peaked a few years after that for overall enrollment. But as that number has come down and the legal jobs have come down too, but the size of the classes got small enough that the job rate went up. And so the people who graduated in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, those years, their job rate was really good. Now, as with anything in statistics, when you peer underneath the averages, you can see a lot of differences. And there's a lot of schools that still don't place many of their graduates into law jobs, right? And then there's others where they're 80, 90%. But one concern I have right now is that the preliminary number we have for the incoming class that just started this month or some last month, that enrollment is increasing and might be increasing a lot.
Yeah.
And we have no reason to think that there's going to be more legal jobs. And so the labor market's not going to change, but the chances of someone entering it do seem like they're going to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how much worse and how long this lasts and how all schools manage this, that's an open question. And a lot of this comes down to, again, that uneven access. So if Harvard increases their class size by 20%, they're not going to do that. I don't think they've done that. But if they did, it wouldn't affect their graduates' employability because their graduates can go pretty much anywhere in the country and get a job.
Yeah.
But if you look at a smaller regional or local school, they're more common, right? And it's these schools where reputation really matters. And looking at geography really, really, really matters, right? If you want to practice law in California, don't go to school in New York.
Yeah.
Vice versa, same thing. If you want to work in Kansas, go to a school in Kansas.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to understand that the labor markets really do differ within states,
right.
And then the access really does differ based on which school you're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, how much support do law schools provide graduates in terms of internships and job placements, if any?
Yeah, so they provide some to a lot. It really depends on the school. I really encourage pre-law students as well as law students to look at how graduates at their school or prospective schools get jobs. A lot of them get them through networking. They get them through going to events and meeting people. They send blind letters. That's a lot more effort for the students than if many of the students at the school get a job through on-campus interviews. The largest firms in the country, they come to campus or virtual campus during a pandemic to interview people and say, we're really interested in you. We're going to put the effort in to come find you and have the school match you with us. And the school process varies, right? But if the school does not have a lot of people going to those jobs, then it really is going to come down to networking and hustle. And knowing that on day one will really set you up for more success.
Yeah, right.
And that's something that schools can help with, but that really has to come from the students.
Yeah, okay. Well, considering how expensive law school is and that students don't have equal access to financial support, what options do those from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds have for getting into law school? Yeah,
so to start, there's 3 really important factors for getting into law school. First is GPA, second is LSAT, which is a standardized test, and the third is a racial diversity factor. So, for any student, but particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds, it starts with getting good grades, right? Your grades matter. And these are any grades you receive before you get your first undergraduate degree. So that doesn't mean take easy classes. What I think it means is take classes you enjoy, because classes you enjoy are more likely to get you a better grade, right? But you also don't want to put like all your eggs in the law school basket and take underwater basket weaving because it's super easy, when really your life will be improved by taking that intro to logic class, which is difficult but helps clarify how you can think about the world.
Right.
So then moving on to the LSAT score. Again, get a good LSAT score. It requires a lot of study, and there's some really great free resources out there that you should use, particularly if you can't afford to pay for a prep course or prep books. The Khan Academy has partnered with the Law School Admission Council, LSAC, which is the creator of the LSAT. And this Khan Academy program, according to LSAC, has started to actually improve people's ability to score well on the exam, right? And so if a student takes it seriously and doesn't just go in and take the test cold, they're more likely to get into schools that give them options that they want, more likely to get a scholarship and set themselves up for success. The other kind of things they can do to set themselves up for success is to engage with the pipeline program. This is a program that helps people get from point A to point B, where point B is law school and point A is wherever they start. These are generally demographic based, usually race, sometimes socioeconomic status. It varies. But one of the things that anyone coming out of these programs should realize is that it's very, very important to apply early. Early doesn't mean apply September, October, right? But it does mean that you should try to apply before the first of the year. And this will give you more opportunities to have schools to say yes to you, which means you can make a more informed choice about which school you say yes to and what price you pay. And then finally, I would say that when you get into law school, they want you. So you should be empowered to negotiate the price that you're going to pay. And that means looking at what is it going to cost you, what are your likely outcomes, and then making the argument to the school that they should give you a larger scholarship. Now, what's really important here is not to focus on the scholarship amount. A $5,000 scholarship at a school that costs $20,000 gives you a better deal, all things equal, than a $30,000 scholarship at a $60,000 per year school, right? And schools will get frustrated if you approach them and say, they gave me 30 and you're only giving me 5, and they say, well, our tuition's a third the price, so of course that's the case. But what these students should realize when they're negotiating is that what they're doing is not being upfront about the transaction with the school, because they kind of find that uncouth, even though that's what's going on, but to think of it as a reconsideration. So please reconsider my scholarship and hear my reasons.
Right.
And I think by looking at yourself as an empowered person who can make a choice and is attractive to these schools, you can turn some of those disadvantages you have into advantages. Because you could say, I come from this background and here's what I'm trying to do to better myself. And the debt that I'm saddled with by going to your school makes this more difficult. And then you play to their emotions and hopefully persuade them to give you a better price.
That's awesome advice. I love that. All right. So of all the things a person should know about law school before going, in your opinion, what is the most important and the least considered by anticipated students?
So I'm going to take both parts at once, I think. So as a student, you will feel pressure from family, from classmates, and even the way law schools are set up as institutions. You don't have to buy into this rat race to be successful, right? Think about what success means to you and do things to bring about that success, right? Not because of the pressures that perpetuates tradition, preconceived notions, or unfair expectations. And I think this is really important for people to really take to heart, because day one, the competitive drive of your classmates, it's going to be intense. And for anyone who maybe feels like they don't belong, it can make them retreat backwards a little bit. So it's important to seek out resources within the school if you're feeling that way. And pretty much every school has actual institutional resources, but every school certainly has people who went through exactly what you're going through. And you should look to find them and ask them, how do they manage it? How do they define their success?
Yeah.
And then figure out how to navigate the next 3 or 4 years after you've had those conversations, and not just try to do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. I like that you bring up the emotional aspect of that, because when you look at all the reasons people go to law school, I mean, the top given are that, oh, well, I want to be a lawyer and earn a lot of money, or, there's the family pressure or expectation that, perhaps you're the first generation that's been able to go to college. And so now it's all on your shoulders to be a lawyer and make a lot of money. And those reasons are just never enough for you to make it through the rigors of law school, the bar exam, and then, of course, a very demanding career.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. And then, as you said, reach out and get that emotional support bubble of fellow students, of mentors, of professors, and, really network and put yourself out there.
Yeah. And that's, all that's not to say that the money stuff doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's reasonable to want to pursue a professional degree and a career because it can provide you financial security. But that, the pathways to getting there don't all look the same. There's lots of different success stories, and it's really important not to focus just on the anecdotes and say, oh, this person was successful from this school, therefore I'm going to be also. Math is still a reality. But, I do think emphasizing those emotional components and thinking about how do I be happy?
Yeah.
It just will make you a better person, regardless of if it's at law school or not.
Yeah. It has to fulfill you and give you purpose above a good paycheck. Yeah.
And there's all kinds of empirical research on that, after a certain point, more money doesn't actually help facilitate your happiness once your basic needs are met.
Totally.
And that's tough for people to really grapple with. I know I struggle with that myself.
Yeah. Especially if you're starting out at a disadvantaged point, Yeah. All right, Kyle, tell me, how does your nonprofit Law School Transparency help college graduates transition to law school and answer some of the important questions we've talked about here today?
Yes. So we have a lot of resources. So the first place to start is at lawschooltransparency.com. What we are trying to do with our resources is to help people make more informed choices. First, about should I be a lawyer at all in the first place, right? And so we have resources to help people think about what does it mean to be a lawyer. And then after that, we have resources to help you decide where to apply, when to apply, how to apply, and then make an informed choice about which school to go to, as well as how much to pay.
Right.
And our resources are very much data driven. So we have quantitative data all over the place related to bar passage rates, employment rates, salaries, admission statistics, all the things you could hope for in making a choice. But we also have qualitative data, right? And we have a podcast called I'm the Law. And what we do is we help people understand what lawyers do through this show. And our hope is that people will see practice areas and practice settings that maybe they didn't consider. And then once they have a better idea for what they want to do, it'll help them actually narrow down which kind of schools they should be going to. And that's not necessarily to say, like, I want to be a criminal lawyer, so there I'm going to go to this school, because generally every school is going to have ample criminal law courses and access to criminal prosecution or defense work, right? It's more to do with, I want to work for a small firm, so I don't need to overpay for a school that will give me access to a lot of big firms.
Yeah.
And if you're going to work for a small firm, the question is, okay, can you get a job? And then what's my life like repaying my debt? So I think those are really important. But the goal I try to leave people with after using our site on the qualitative side is that I want them to build a general understanding and avoid overvaluing the insight of any single lawyer, no matter how confident they sound, and then to actually use quantitative data to make their choices, to rank order their schools in a way that makes sense and doesn't rely on the US news rankings, which do way more harm than good when it comes to informed decisions. So, if you want to go to law school and be a lawyer, that's great. Just do so on an informed basis. don't luck into satisfaction. People are far more likely to be satisfied if they follow the process on it and make choices on an informed basis.
Yeah. So there it is, exactly what you need to know before going to law school, straight from the expert's mouth, Kyle McEntee. If you have any other important questions about law school, I really encourage you to check out Law School Transparency, which does a lot of consumer advocacy and public education about the legal profession. All the details you need are provided below. If you're in law school or preparing to take the bar exam, you should really get Brainscape certified MBE flashcards in your corner. This collection contains over 2,600 adaptive flashcards that will drill you on the key concepts you'll probably find in big bar review courses like Barbary or Themis, but condensed down to a super efficient flashcard format that helps you study more efficiently with spaced repetition. And whether you're in law school, just trying to keep your head above water, or preparing to take the biggest exam of your life, these can be a real lifeline to helping you get the content down pat. Brainscape also has a law academy packed with helpful guides on topics you'll no doubt be familiar with, like dealing with bar exam stress, studying for the bar, acing law firm interviews, and making key decisions like picking a bar review course and a law specialty as you embark upon your career. So grab these tools, study hard, and rise to your challenge.